what I thought we would do is kind of start big and drill down into a couple of Pete's company's specific products. Okay, so we have a couple new faces here. So Pete, can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to Texas, just broadly what your company does?
Yeah, sure. We're launching, or we already have at different levels of stages, 10 technology companies around the real estate space. And they run the gamut from like a blockchain-based property that is tokenizing real estate to democratize real estate investing, called OwnProp, to another company called Get Done that is bringing machine learning, computer vision to maintenance and construction space, to the thing called Pay Up that is sort of a Square for contract workers in the real estate space, and Insure Pro. Anyways, I could just keep going, but we got a ton of them. And that's it, So we are, I like Salem Center a lot. And, you guys got great leadership here. One place that's got courage still, I think, in academia, right? And free thinking, which is key for innovation. You need to have people who challenge the status quo, who disagree with whatever's being done, because that's how innovation happens, right?
Yep.
And I'm naturally like that, right? I'm always like the rebel, But you need that rebellious mindset. Otherwise, you're not going to change anything. You need to come at the way things are being done in business, the way it's being done in work, and think, man, this could be done a lot smarter. And then you figure out why would you think that? Well, you look at existing technologies and you try to figure out, well, how can I apply it here, or come up with new combinations of technologies to apply it to a different set of problems, applications. So anyway, I think I'm a big fan of it. Plus, I just like people. I just prefer to hang around people who aren't like, sheep, who just like, challenge things, who think on their own feet. You know what I'm saying? Because otherwise, like, what are you going to talk about?
Yeah.
So
you had your company back up in Seattle, moved to Texas.
Yeah.
At what point did you start to make that decision where you were like, you know what, this might not be the place for my business. We need to make a change.
Yeah. So we had started in San Francisco, and we had an office there. Then I went and set up an office in Seattle. So Seattle's where Amazon, Microsoft are. A lot of people don't realize how much power is in Seattle from the technology industry. But they build technology very differently than they do in San Francisco. They obviously are both very good at it, but they use different ways that they construct it. So it was good for me to get up there and spend time deep in the heart of that ecosystem, understand how they build. Now, we weren't planning to move out of Seattle, actually. That was sort of that was not something in the long-term plan, right? We were thinking, Silicon Valley, Seattle, that's going to be our base pretty much for the technology operation for the company. But I think COVID, when it hit in like March, whenever it hit, that gave me an opportunity where we stepped back and we said, okay, maybe we should consider whether or not we want to stay here. That, some of the looting in the street right in front of my house was probably helpful with that. So, but there was, in general, I think it was a bit of a catalyst, or just maybe you could call it. COVID was the catalyst, but it was also a bit of a cherry on top, where it was like, all right, now I think everybody realizes that there is a certain intolerant environment around here, and it's probably not going away. We thought like the pendulum's going to swing the other way, but it wasn't really going away. And I was thinking, I had observed over time that your company is run by your employees, and you get your employees from the area that you're based in, largely speaking. And you draw from that local ecosystem. Same thing in Seattle, tons of UW, University of Washington talent there. And same thing in San Francisco, tons of Berkeley and Stanford talent, right, that feed these companies, because it's all right in the middle of that.
Yeah.
So, we just stepped back, and I thought, we're in a window here. People's kids didn't have to go to school. So I was like, all right, we could actually, now might be the time to make a move. We could relocate. It's an easier time, because the biggest thing, that the friction of moving is so painful for people, that you want to have a lower friction moment. So that triggered me to start thinking about it. I started thinking about it. And as I thought about it more, it made more and more sense, actually. So we are the first technology company I know of that actually made the move. And then Elon Musk, followed me and stuff. No, but yeah, like a year later? About a year later. But I'm sure he had come to similar thinking, right? Sure. He was probably like, I got to get the hell out of here. Too many damn Nazis and commies around here. But they're good. They're people too, So.
So let's like dig into that a little bit. I mean, what specifically started to really kind of tick you off about that area, where you're like, you know what, like I would rather get my talent from a place like Texas?
It's just the way they looked at me, No, I'm kidding. No, it was. Look, there's a lot of great people, and I have a lot of friends there, right? So in both those places, and a lot of people actually would have loved to move, but they have so rooted with their families and stuff that they can't make the transition out, but they see it as well. But the game's not over there, right? A lot of people are fighting back, sure. and there's an undercurrent, but people don't see it yet. But there's an undercurrent of resistance from some of the, even guys like Jack Dorsey. They're not buying into this stuff. They don't like it. So they're not into the whole intolerance. The environment in these areas was a tolerant environment to begin with, right? That created a good ecosystem for technology. But then it became more of it's becoming more closed in. Yeah. But that, my thinking is these places are more or less plateauing anyways. And you could see it with just the cost of living are just dramatic. You see the intolerance, you see the sort of stuff that sort of signs of plateauing. It doesn't mean it going down. They're still going to stay at powerhouse areas. But I thought about where's the next big wave, and I want to be on the next big wave. And what are those things, Along with other things, I didn't want to build a company that's then taken over by people that I just are intolerant either, so I don't want that to happen. But there's always a lot of factors to a decision, right? Yeah. And I think it's, here it seemed very, like when I thought about it, when I put down all my thinking, right, first, and then the first thing that popped in my head was Austin, Texas. And so that tells you right there. I mean, it was almost a pretty clear call, because after I put down the thinking on it, I immediately thought it. Then I did my work. I was like, all right, let me just put that aside. That could just be my personal bias, because it is a cool place to be. But so I put that aside, and we just did the research. But yeah, it ended up checking out as Austin was a clear winner. The talent base here is excellent. You guys included here. Look, I mean, you think like you build companies off like Microsoft off of like a feeder like a UW, right? University of Washington. Well, think about UT Austin right here, right? So it's you can build massive company here, and you've got the talent. Texas A&M is also great as well, and they're pumping out excellent engineers as well. So I mean, we like that as well. We don't play favorites like my kids. So we're going to recruit from both pretty heavily. Yeah. So, but those are my two favorite ones, I'd say. Yeah. And I mean, they're both so well funded. So you get when you get the cream of the crop from a big state like this, I mean, that's real cream. Yeah. It's 30 million people. This is you guys are real cream, So.
And so how is that going now? So you have a lot of job postings. You've gotten funding. Seems like you're hitting the ground running. Are you getting a lot of people? Are you getting a lot of applicants?
Yeah, I mean, so we've had success building out. We've also been recruiting heavily though. So we've been pulling people from. So we can get young people coming in are awesome, right? They're like legs. They bring challenge. The cutting edge technologies. They're aware of these things. They tend to be more embracing of the crypto stuff and some of the applications around ML. They're a little bit more aware of, say, ML operations. Some of the more cutting edge tech that's happening, right? But they lack some of the experience and the know-how that comes through execution on the engineering and technical sides. So we still have recruited from, which we're into, well, we moved our team, first of all, from the West Coast, but we're still pulling people from San Francisco and Seattle, and they're just moving and joining us. And we're also pulling from Chicago and New York. So some of the secondary tech hubs, and because of the policies governmentally in these areas, it actually has made recruiting somewhat easier. And Austin's not a hard sell either. I mean, people like it. And within the tech industry, we're pretty dissimilar right now. We have a bit of our own spot, which is we're a place that is very open. You can come with your ideas, and doesn't matter what your background is or political ideology, we don't care. Like if you're a Trump diehard, I'm still like, cool, man, let's build some products. I don't care. You like AOC, that's cool too. Whatever, let's just crush. I don't care.
Yeah, cool.
As long as you're good people and you embrace others and you're down to, get after it hard and you're world class.
Yeah. So when people typically, and I kind of want to pivot a bit more to your company. So when you think of a startup, right, you have one big idea, right, and that's what gets funded. What you guys are currently building now is you have about eight to 10 ideas, right, and the whole idea is to somehow kind of information share across them. Could you talk a little bit about why you made that decision? Yeah. How you try to fundraise around that, and what you think the outcome will be? Yeah.
So first of all, I've been putting a lot of the financing or definancing in the company. So that's one of the benefits of entrepreneurship. Eventually, you will, make money, and you could basically do very ballsy things like what we've been doing. But we are raising money. Because eventually I will run out of liquidity. if we keep running, you know what I mean? And we're going to keep running. But that will take a while. But in the meantime, cash is worth stuff, so we're taking cash in, only from aligned investors. But we have 10 companies, but that's not the limit of what we wanted to do. But there's a lot of other ideas we had. We just had to prioritize, and we focused the 10 with coming through the real estate space, because that's an area that I'm very confident that we will win. We have a lot of experience in that area. So you want to, generally when you play in anything in entrepreneurship, you want to play with the deck is stacked in your favor. It's like, how do you beat Bobby Fischer? He was a famous tech champion. Oh no, chess champion, right? Yeah, the way you beat him is you don't play chess. You play something else that you know. That's how you beat him, right? So you got to play what you know. We know, I know real estate real well. Our team knows it in and out, and we know tech well. So we can go after that. And it's undisrupted, and it's massive. It's 4 times the size of global stock markets as an industry goes.
Yeah, cool. So, kind of drilling into one of those companies.
Yeah.
What's one of those companies that you're pretty pumped up about? Could you talk a little bit about that, and maybe we can talk about the tech?
Yeah. So let me go back to, you also mentioned why 10 and this and that. There is a reason why, beyond the fact that we have big ambitions, because we do, but we also chose 10 because it's hard to predict with investing in technology liquidity events. It could be anywhere from 3 years to Tesla took like 20 years before it really started hitting, right? Or Palantir took like 18 or something before it hit, right? So it could take a while, but then again, you have other ones that are faster. Facebook was pretty quick when it went, and other ones like that, right? So they can go 3 years, I think, on the very earliest side, up till it could be like 20, right? So it's hard to predict that, but if you spread your bets over 10 of them, you'll see liquidity. The probability goes up. You'll see it faster along the way as you're going. Okay. So for the investors, I think it's a better selection choice. It's still focused on the real estate side, but it spreads bets amongst 10 things. I don't know how much you guys know about investing, but tech is a different type of investment. It has a thing what they call the power law. It's like a long tail, essentially. So, but one of them will kick off a lot more, or 2 of them will kick off a lot more in, say, the 10-year term or so. And I would challenge the power law thinking as to whether it could be achieved over a longer thread. I think over a longer thread through force of execution around a good strategy, you can hit on all 10, actually. Yeah. And there's nothing, and I've read a lot on this topic. There's nothing I read that have dissuaded me from that. But I do think on the liquidity side, you can't predict the liquidity.
Yeah, okay. Cool. So diving into one of your products, what's one that you're pumped about, and how does it work?
The other thing on the data side, continue to answer your first question, there's a lot of rich data we can gather by launching 10 in different areas around the real estate side. So we can start developing deeper and deeper machine learning around certain areas and getting clean data, which is just not clean data in real estate operations at all, but getting clean data and then applying machine learning to it, then developing different applications, deep learning around it, so we have our own little execution. You got to be narrow with machine learning and AI and stuff, but coming in on 10 of these, we can just get a rich pool of data, and we have data sharing agreements amongst these 10 companies, from everything from like investments down to like how the maintenance is being done. So you could just get a massive data warehouse going that you can spin up your advantages on. Now there is data in the industry, but none of it is clean. It is complete crap. Even in my background is private equity, real estate in the past, right? We have a lot of data there, but it's just not as good. It kind of sucks, right? You can't use it for machine learning. Currently, though, we have very good data because we worked on it, but it takes a lot of work.
Yeah. Okay, so
how many of you guys are like technical here? Because I don't know. We have some. Okay, so I don't know. And then how many people know about anything about finance or investment? A couple. Okay, so all right, cool. Because I don't know if I'm saying stuff that's just like,
Well, let's actually, so let's talk about the data. What do you mean when you say, okay, we're going to have a lot of this data floating around? Like, what does data in like a tech and real estate space look like?
Yeah, so one of the companies I mentioned before was called Get Done, so I can both answer your previous question and this one as well.
Sure.
Which is about, so what is one of the companies? So Get Done, how do we use data there? So Get Done focuses on getting maintenance jobs and construction jobs done to start with. Long term, we want to get into every type of task. We want to get babysitting done, whatever it is, right? But we're starting in the maintenance side and attacking that. And that is it's a side that no one's bringing technology to. So we're very proud to bring that to working people that have not been served by technology. And it's both we're serving, in partnership with professionals that are executing their jobs. So we're empowering them with tools. But we're also serving, primarily as our optimized customer, people who run properties, manage them. These are people that are incredibly busy. They have kids often and everything else, right? And they don't get paid that much. And they're not able to scale their efforts or leverage their efforts using tools because no one's building anything for them. Yeah. So we're building these tools that get done to empower them and leverage them. And I know these people really well because my previous company, we have a lot of them employed, right? And so we're able to dog food this stuff. You know, it's one of our secret sauces. So we've been able to get our machine learning, you know, just off the ground, lightning speed. Yeah. And it's working as well. Our computer vision's already working also on our application of it. And I can get into how we're doing that. Some of it's a bit trade secret-y type stuff, but I think I have patents around a number of things anyways. So, but I don't know exactly how, like my patent attorney actually just emailed me yesterday about stuff. So you're not supposed to talk about the patent before you file it. But I've already filed a bunch of them, I just don't. But anyways, we'll talk anyways.
Okay.
Screw the patent office. But anyway, so get done. So, you know, if you think like, say someone needed to knock down this wall, say there was a problem with the wall. Say rip this, whatever the hell this thing is.
Board.
Yeah, rip the board down and go like fix the wall, right? That's a pretty easy job. But you come in, you could take, you know, you could basically assess the job. The person has scoping the job at the upfront. I'm going to get into the details of this, but it gives you an idea how you apply the technology, right? Is scoping this job is sounds easy, but the problems of it, if you get the scope wrong, it's like getting scope wrong on software engineering. If the product people give you bad specs, you just end up engineering the wrong thing, right? So you got to get the scope correct up front. Now, if you don't get it correct, everything downstream just doesn't go well. It jams up everything. You could even order the wrong parts, and then that jams up and slows down the whole thing. And this happens on $280 trillion of real estate throughout the world, right? There's $280 trillion of real estate. It's massive. No one's applying technology like this to it that I've heard of at all, period. We are, though, but you come and you could take pictures of this, use your camera. It could help you identify the proper parts and supplies. And then eventually we're going to help route that to who can deliver you those supplies nearby at price points that would be whatever. It gives you the idea of, and you can then negotiate bulk price and help drive down costs and time to get these things. So it helps the person manage themselves, and then also identifying the right professional that would have the right skill sets due to a knowledge graph that we'd have around the professionals. Sure. To know who would be the appropriate person that we have good information on, that does it reliable, that's locally in the area and is available. So this helps to route this job in. Now, this is a more simple job, but a lot of jobs are more complex, where you got to get supplies, you have multiple different types of contractors at play. We're already dealing with this. You'll have like 8 or 9 of these people, and they operate in a sequential fashion. They don't generally operate in parallel, so you can't, there's dependency. You have to get it right. The scope has to be right, then the next job has to be right, the next job. Yeah. And then down to the cleaning at the end, right? It has to be correct for the job to be signed off on, cleaned up by the customer, to be happy with it. So anyways, that give you an idea of some of how we're doing it?
Yeah, cool. Okay.
And our deep learning that we're using currently is already higher than anything we're aware of, significantly higher. I mean, a percentage of knowledge of what it's targeting, it's like 95% accuracy. And that I think the other ones that we've been able to find that are out there are about 55 to 60. So, okay. And we're compounding our advantages we're running here. We plan to be at over 1 million images that we've been able to run through it by the end of this year. We have one of our guys from machine learning I brought with me, so when I make these statements about where they're going to be by the end of the year, it's also to put pressure on him. So he's running ML ops for the company. But also afterwards, when we're chatting, you guys should chat with him as well.
So when you say like images, you mean like you have contractors who are taking pictures of parts of houses, of fixes, of walls.
Yeah, exactly. And we're also using machine learning as well, and to basically identify when their picture is off. So they haven't taken a good picture. A lot of them will just like take a picture of like, you know, random stuff, right? Just upload and just keep moving. But it will just identify immediately it's off, so they have to keep going because it will know if the image is correct because it has vision recognition technology that identifies, is that actually whatever the hell you said it was?
Sure.
So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so
then that gets, because it's all about clean data right there, right? So if you don't get the clean data on the front end, then everything we're running behind just sucks.
Yeah.
So you got to get it right up front.
So like if I'm the guy who actually goes and fixes walls, how do I?
I don't think you'd be that good at that.
I probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm much better on a computer.
Yeah. Stick to brainiac work, man. But I brought Bucky with me, guys, as the counselor.
Absolutely.
If you have any questions for him, you let me know.
This guy's a Texan, yeah.
He's our ML expert.
Yeah, that's right. So if I do want to go fix walls, or how do I get into y'all's network? Is this like, how do you basically bring in these workers? How do you find them? Do you already have that network there?
So some of those things are operational, right? You've got to go out and get the right types of pros.
Okay.
And then, but as you get them, you can then start to gain, knowledge graph of them and understand what they are good at over time. Or even up front, you could run some things on that to help you to better understand what they could be good at. There might be things they're good at they're not aware of as well that you can also be applying. So.
Got it. Cool.
And then you got to get a density of them. You got to feed them with jobs and keep it moving. So it's a in that sense, we're using a bit of a managed marketplace model on that side as a tool, almost like Amazon uses. They have their primary thing, but they also use a managed marketplace to deliver goods to you when you order off Amazon. So
yeah, cool. Let's talk a bit about OwnProp. What is OwnProp? What are some recent properties you guys have purchased and you're trying to, put into that platform? What does that even mean?
Yeah, so OwnProp is the idea is to allow other people to own property for everybody, right? Currently, owning property is the luxury of the rich throughout all of history. And obviously some people own their homes, this and that, right? But generally, nice pieces of real estate downtown are owned by rich people. So rich people like myself, because I own some stuff downtown. But I didn't own stuff when I was younger. I come from a working class family, and I want to democratize it so everybody can. So we have purchased, I bought 2 hotels downtown. One of them is getting gutted right now, but eventually I'll put that on the blockchain as well. But we're going to put, the other one was Hotel Ella, just closed about a month ago, we just bought. So Hotel is 2 blocks from here or so. There's another one was called the Pearl Inn, about another 2-minute walk. We also bought that about a year and a half ago, but thanks to the local city council, that's taken me like a long time and giving me an ulcer. But anyways, for us to be able to get approvals to just run our construction on it, which now is in full speed. But and then we bought another office building that's a little bit down from there, about 3/4 of a mile. But what we're doing is taking Ella, and we're going to take it and put it, tokenize it using blockchain, and basically the idea, the differentiation there is allowing people. It's using what blockchain to me does. Its differentiation as a tool is it drops the costs of your certainty of knowing that object was owned by this person and the provenance, the history of ownership as it was passed on, what they call it solves the double spending problem, some people call it, right? But some of these jargon words, people just don't understand what the hell it means and they just repeat it. Like it's a distributed ledger or whatever the hell. So great, but what does that mean? So basically it allows you to have a very high level of confidence without a third party verifying it. Like currently you use accounts payable or and a lot of other functions like attorneys, recording offices, and different people that verified, and then you have a chain of title plus insurance. So all these things around making sure that title was owned correctly by person A that gave it to person B on the sale. So blockchain allows you to get rid of all that and do it at a higher level of certainty anyways. So you can see that provenance, the chain of title, as it was owned by me and I sold it to you for this amount of money, it's recorded. You take it, you sell it to him, it's recorded, without having all these people involved. And it's so costly that if you wanted to buy, say if you wanted to buy like $1,000 of real estate, it would cost you, $1,000 on your closing to buy that real estate. To secure title that you have it for sure. Because, closing costs at $1,000, you'd be lucky to have it that cheap anyways, right? So say you go buy it for $10,000. So I'm like, oh, well, we'll lower the investment to $10,000. Well, now it's still 10% of your cost of your investment. That doesn't make it worthwhile as an investment. But you can drop it to theoretically 0 using blockchain and have a higher level of certainty using it. So that's why I'm excited about blockchain and the way you can use it. Then you can also, our goal would be able to take Ella and then tokenize it down to $1 investments per person, right? We're not going to start at $1. We also have to start with accredited investors, which is because of the laws of the United States and the SEC, which I think should be changed, but we don't got to talk about that. But because really what it does is it keeps people that are not already rich from accessing private investments. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it makes it unfair. So people that aren't already rich should be able to access this level of the playing field for everybody. So, and if they did that, then people, right now I could take people that could invest at a very low threshold. Mm-hmm. We could take it down to, we could probably get it down to $1 fairly quickly. So, but anyways, I don't know if that all makes sense. But basically, the idea would be someone could, and this is more of the vision, right? So when I was prepping for this, or when I not for this talk, but in general, before I went to technology full in, I had gone to like 85 countries around the world, and I had a lot of meetings, like 1,000 meetings, and had a lot of, I was out of the country for a year and a half, but I was trying to assess where are global problems that I can see patterns around, and that I can go and attack to have the biggest impact I could possibly have globally, right? So one of the biggest problems, this is OwnProp is helping to solve this. Once we get it going fully, that this can happen. This would have to, we have to get some laws of the land to change to have this happen, right? But this will happen eventually. Is someone in India, say, or a different country, that the currency is getting, let's do any country. I don't want to pick on any country, but the currency is getting getting inflated every year. So you could have $1 and it's worth 70 cents next year. This is just the reality of what people are dealing with in other countries. So you could, you have your dreams and your hopes for your own siblings, for your parents, for your kids when you have kids, and you want them to go a little ahead of where you were, right? So you say you want to get your kid into a good school, send them to UT Austin, right? Well, it's freaking expensive, unless it's still expensive if you want. But if you do from Texas, it's cheaper. But say you want to send them to a great school, well, it's pretty expensive. So how are you going to afford that when you're saving your money, but it keeps going down in costs? And say you're poor, right? What if you can get $1,000 a month, and that would be a lot, but $1,000 and then into Ella, and you could take pieces of that. Just put it in over time, and then you get immutably recorded tokens you could take off-site, so you don't have to depend on our servers. You don't got to depend on big tech saving your data and protecting you, and you don't have to worry as much about hackers. I mean, there is some concern there with quantum computing, but eventually you can solve that later. But whatever. But you can then take that offline, and you can own that securely, and that investment goes up over time rather than down. And it opens up all sorts of possibilities for this person. Because if you can own something like Ella, Ella is prime real estate. The land is like perfectly located, right? So it's going to go up in value. I mean, nothing's certain, right? But I mean, due to inflation, due to the fact that you're right next to the seat of the government for the fastest growing state in the country that's already big anyways. And technology companies are coming here like crazy. So it's just going to go up and it's right next to UT Austin, so you can feed off that whole thing, right? So. Anyways, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'd like to go back to and maybe touch on something that I think you wanted to start talking about, and that's dealing with the SEC.
No, I didn't want to talk about that, actually. Did
you
want to talk about that?
I mean, yeah. I'm kind of curious, right?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of your products, you start, kind of butting up against government regulations.
I think Elon Musk had enough problems with the SEC. I think I'm going to take a lesson off him and maybe not say too much. But no, I'm sure they're good people and they mean well.
Yeah. Well, so I'll ask a slightly more general question. How much time do you spend thinking about government regulations, dealing with them, and trying to jump over those hurdles?
Yeah, no, it's I've thought about it fairly deeply, I'd say, but I don't need to think about it anymore because I think I pretty much know what the game is. I understand what the game is, and I understand what we need to do, and we have a clear path of what we're going to do. Yeah. And there's a couple ways you can do it. You can either go the path we're taking, which is going to do it, stay in bounds to where the laws are, and just follow it and just play the long game there and get all the approvals. That takes a little longer, 18 months or so, right? The other way you could do it is just disregard the rules and just go ahead and just make plays. Now the reason why I'm going the upfront way is because eventually you're going to have to get approval, right? And also the SEC has unlimited spending power, right? Because they get off tax money, right? So they're funded from the U.S. tax system. So they're a government entity. And I don't want to be a poster boy. I don't want our company being a poster boy for that. Plus, there's real criminal stuff they can nail you. I went to Harvard Law, so I'm a JD. So I'm not even a good person to make excuses. And I have a CPA, so they'd be like, "What the hell? Of course you knew this stuff." Yeah. So I think we want to stay in the inbounds. There are some people doing it out of bounds. They're just going and doing whatever. That's a riskier game. In the end of the day, you've got to create a great product, anyways, which takes time, right? You got to keep working at it, and you got to be able to market it well so it's well known to people. What your product does, and you're serving them well, and you get excellent assets. Yeah. So a lot of these other groups I've talked to, there's not too many of them actually that are doing this. There's just a very, very small amount, like maybe 2 or 3 that are actually legit. But I've talked to their CEOs, and they're great people. But I would say what we're doing differently is we have very high quality assets. We have premium assets that you would want. We don't have. And I'm not going to allow on the platform secondary, tertiary assets. or assets that are just kind of crap, you know, we just like get them and we throw them on there and let the fools buy them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
Like we're going like reputation all the way, do it the right way, do it really well, take care of these people who are buying stuff, make sure it's a great experience over the long thread, do it right with the SEC, go through all the hoops and everything else, knowing there's a certain 18-month lag no matter what, but just get through it all and then consider it a barrier to entry after we get it done.
Sure.
So
makes sense. Yeah. Cool. Well, I could keep talking and keep asking questions, but maybe we should open the floor to students.
Yeah.
How was your experience getting VC funding in Austin versus?
I didn't do any funding, so I've funded everything myself. So that's why I mentioned about if you're successful in entrepreneurship, you can do, you can get things going without permission. So, but we are taking on investors now, but I'm not taking VC investment. I've talked to a number of VCs just to say what's up, and eventually we will for some of the 10 companies. But at the company level, I'm not taking it at the holding level structure. And the reason why is because they have their own LPs that they're dealing with. They call it LPs, limited partners. Their limited partners are these investors generally that are from institutions or a mixture of different groups. That could be pension fund money and everything else. So they have their own requirements that they put on the VC. The VC has to make sure that they exit it in a certain time frame. That could be, it could be somewhat arbitrary, as in it's just in 10 years they got to sell. And they might have two 1-year extensions. This is generally how it works. But in 10 years, like what if it's not ready? What if it's actually, it needs another 5 years, say if it's like a Tesla experience or whatever it might be, right? So you could theoretically, you could get good at VCs that maybe can promise you that they could do that, but I don't want to mess with that where they have arbitrary other things that are non-economic because I have my own investors coming in with us at the holding level. At the sub levels, when we do, we can be more careful with that. And now the VCs are good too. I don't want to dog them. They're good, and where they bring value, I think primarily is not really in picking companies because it's almost like a herd mentality there. I think where they're primarily valuable in is they can help out when you want to go IPO or you want to do an M&A, strategic acquisition, or you want to be acquired. Because they have tons of networks there. And they're very good at the finance and everything else, right? They're very strong on that side. And they have a whole team that can handle this. That's where I really think they can come in handy. Now, them coming in with a boatload of cash can be also helpful, but I don't need a lot of cash right now. We need a certain amount of cash. At some point when you're ready to blow up a certain operation and you want to absolutely just get insane amounts of cash, at a certain point that could make sense. But when you do that, cash comes at a cost, right? You have to give up equity. Equity is the most expensive thing in the company because it's worth the most. That's also for you guys as you go out, make sure you get equity. Forget about the cash, go get equity. You know what I'm saying? Like forget about your salary and stuff, that's all tax and everything else. Equity grows over time and that's where you're gonna really make bank, especially at your age. So even like little slivers, man, it was somebody we were looking at recently and one of the companies that's public right now, the person had like a 0.3% interest or less or whatever and still made like 120 million off of it. So I mean, you just want to get with something that's going to get huge and just get some kind of sliver on it,
What do you think is the reason to work for one of your 10 companies from Austin versus a more conventional?
Yeah, like a Dell or Tesla or whatever, bigger company. Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think if you're kind of like a coward or something and you want to go work at a big company, but if you're not a coward, you're more like Richard and you got a lot of courage and you want to go work at a startup. So, no, but some people are more risk averse, and I think you can change that in yourself. And look, at your age, you should be all in risky. Take risk. What do you have to lose anyways? Like you get a slice of equity on the right thing, plus you'll learn a ton, right? So even if the company blows up, doesn't do well, say if it goes under, right? It goes bankrupt. Who cares? You come out in 3 years and you learned a lot, right? So I think you just and then the next thing you do, you'll be more successful because when you're in a smaller company, right? When you pick one of these companies, you learn the whole thing, right? Because you're just around it. You just absorb. It's like immersion. You absorb it. You're not going to get away with just doing only engineering. You'll have to do a little biz dev or at least understand it. Plus, with machine learning anyways, you have to really, on a small company, you have to understand the application of it, which means you have to understand the customer desire. Because ultimately, the machine learning is going to be an application backward designed from that customer's needs, which is basically the product, the interface with the customer, right? So you have like the Bezos approach is like customer obsession. Like a Steve Jobs approach was like product. It's the same thing though, right? It's basically nailing it for what that customer really wants. But in order to do it, you need to backward design that and be able to collaborate with the product, the engineering, the data engineering side as well, and then I was talking with our machine learning guy on operations with the ML team today about some of this stuff. But basically, you got to be able to collaborate, almost like machine learning operations is what's happening now, right? To be able to nail all that. Now I'm talking about machine learning operations too much here, but you guys might be just something different, like software engineering, or I don't know what your backgrounds are, or you could be on the biz dev side or whatever. So, what was the question, man? I'm just like running.
Why work for
Oh, okay. Yeah, so when you're at a small company, a startup, you're going to learn the whole gamut. That's why. The learning curve is crazy. You're going to learn so much. I mean, you're going to be stressed out like nuts, though. You know, I'm stressed out a lot. So I could have a much easier life, obviously. Be something that I can't even sleep at night, right? And for what? I already have so much, you know, I could easily have been retired. Even when I got out of Harvard Law, I could have checked out. I already had a couple businesses that were kicked off enough money. So, but life is short, right? You want to have a big impact on people. You want to serve people as much as you can. And you have gifts, right? And you have things that have been given to you, and you're charged to give them back to serve other people. And that's gonna make you happier anyways. Do you want to be old and like, you know, telling your kids or your grandkids, you know, how like you just took the easy path, you're risk averse, you know, but yeah, you know, played it safe the whole time, you know, but what do you have to speak of, you know? You're still alive, but whatever, man. Everyone's going to go eventually. So you might as well just get in there and crush, you know? And that's what the startup is going to give you the opportunity for. And I think if you go work at, and these are, the companies here in Austin are great, and I got enough enemies within the tech industry, so I don't want to pick more fights, but they're good, great companies. You also have Tesla coming here and stuff like that. So you got great companies, right? These companies are already huge though. Tesla's like 20 years old, right, basically. I think Musk bought it in like 2002 or something like that, right? So it's a pretty old company. It's bigger, it's already arrived. Get a company that's more like Tesla was in 2002, 3, 4, 5, right? And get in there for that ride, because you also get a little sliver of equity there, and that's gonna be worth so much more than when you get it when they're bigger, right? So, but I know a lot of these big companies are gonna be throwing cash at people, right? Because they have a lot of cash. But you just gotta say no, man, just say no. And go to a startup and just learn. The best investment's in yourself, right? Because that's, especially when you're young. So. And it's more fun too. So, to me, stress and fun are just two sides of the same coin. Right? The more stress you have, the more fun you have. And I mean, good stress, you know? Not like people are dying stress, but like, man, I got crazy deadlines we got to hit, and we got to do this and this and this, you know? You guys are more serious today. Last time I talked, I feel like people were you know, not that serious, but go ahead.
What were some of the interesting customer demands that got you thinking about customer behavior when it comes to real estate?
Yeah, so the way I'll interpret your question is basically what was the way I came to think about applying certain technologies and the way we're applying them is, I mean, a lot of these things come out of problems, right? The flip side of the problem is the opportunity, right? So I would see how you would have, so say, look at properties, right? Every property is managed by somebody, including this one. But say you have a residential large apartment complex. I've purchased over time about 20,000 apartments in my life, right? And then we have other things like hotels and stuff now, a couple, and other things like office buildings. But anyways, when you run them and you own them, you see a lot of inefficiencies being done. So one of them is you'll have a property manager running stuff who tends to understand customer desires, more like the resident side of things, the guest side of things. They don't understand well construction and maintenance. Now, they think they do sometimes. Most of the time they think they do. But they don't understand it. They understand a very cursory level. And then the issue that compounds itself is that the construction and maintenance people know that they don't understand it. So then you have this friction that erupts. So there's the lack of respect. And then they're also managing something they're not even that good at while not doing more of what they are good at, which is dealing with people and driving revenue. And driving revenue is the most valuable thing they can do for themselves and for their career. And when you do what you're good at, you're more happy and you're more productive anyways. But instead what they're doing is they're bogged down in a lot of stuff they're not as good at. And that just jams them up, and they have tons of work on their plate. I mean, these people work like crazy. And they have a lot of stresses from it, right? But if you can come in and you could take the construction and maintenance side off their plate using something like Get Done, that will handle it way more effectively anyways, and at a lower cost long term. And right now it can do it at about the same cost or less anyways. It's more about an education of the customer that this can happen, because a lot of them right now would be like, oh man, can this actually work? But once they start using it, they start being like, wow, this is great. You know, because now they can focus on what they're good at and they have a lot more free time. So that's how I would notice. I would see these problems. I would see that there's all these inefficiencies. There's also like no data tracking of things. You'll go to like a lot of these construction shops and they'll have all these materials and everything else, right? it's all running off these guys' heads. And they're smart people. They understand how to build stuff right off the top of the head. They don't even need to use plans. But that's not scalable. And also, you can't trace things well. So you don't know what went into everything. And then you have all these different, so you have supply issues. So we have one of the companies that we're kicking off is called Shop Supply. But basically, what that is doing is it's bringing computer, someone's like, man, are these trade secrets? Am I supposed to say these things? But let me just give you guys what we're doing anyways, right? Basically what it's doing is it's coming in with computer vision, and it's using, I don't know if you guys have ever been to an Amazon Go store in Seattle. Have you ever been there? Yeah, it's bonkers, right? Yeah. I was there when it first opened up. I was like, yo, this is crazy. Because they have all this machine learning, and you just go in, grab whatever you want, walk right out, and it just builds you. It's nuts. So, I mean, it's just crazy technology. But if you come in, and that's probably how I got this idea, but you could do that in a maintenance shop. And now that technology has just dropped, like Wright's Law, technology drops every 2 years, like halves, right? Or something like that. So, I mean, basically, you come in, you could put this type of stuff, they don't have to change their behavior. They could just do what they're doing, but we could track all this stuff. But then we don't have problems of supply backup problems where you're missing a supply. Well, why are you missing a supply? I forgot to order this thing. It's just like it seems non-essential. It's like a washer. It's not that important. Well, guess what? You can't even do the job without it. So tracking these small things and keeping them all there allows streamlined execution and throughput to happen, which all drops down to the bottom line, makes people's lives a lot better. They can make more money and they have more free time to spend with their family, pursuing career options, educating themselves, you know? So, but yeah, all of this stuff is stuff I saw because I was so immersed in it. Most people that are, say, like my background, they come from the finance side, but I came from the construction side. Because back in the day, you know, I wasn't, you know, I'm from a working class background. Like I started in community college, I transferred to like a random Catholic school, then I transferred to Georgetown, then I went to Harvard Law later. So I worked in construction back in the day, so I see all these issues. And then also within the company, I never outsourced these things. I just ran it all myself, you know? So I became intimately familiar with these problems.
Could you talk a little bit about the kind of different, or your typical tech schooling, your typical tech education versus what you think people should be learning? It should be more kind of broad, more, you know, a little bit more liberal arts focused, and why you think that's important for?
I would say, you know, my positions on things are always nuanced. So I think that you want both. You want both. No matter what you go into, you should have some liberal arts education, which is an underpin. It's basically a bedrock of knowledge, and you want to get it as horizontal as you can, broad. So that way you can think on a lot of fronts quickly. Like I was talking to some of the machine learning guys this morning, but we were going over different things, and they were talking about like random forest and different stuff. And basically, I always just keep pushing until we can understand it in a way in our abstracted reason what it is doing. And they're like, well, how the machines run like this is almost mysterious. I'm like, well, screw that. That's a thought stopper. Let's keep going. We'll figure it out. Like, how do we think it's getting this, you know? But just that way, we always want, and I'm not afraid to apply my brain to anything, probably because I try to broaden my education. And I've seen this with other people too. You look at some of the greatest entrepreneurs, they have a broad background. Steve Jobs, a liberal arts background. But you'll see some of these guys, Peter Thiel has a philosophy background. So you'll see some of these people come into the technology industry and do well because you're trained how to think. But I think being trained how to think is very good, and that's helpful. But you do need to apply yourself, especially if you're going to go into engineering. You've got to master that discipline, and that is hard, right? And it's deep, and it takes apprenticeship as well. You can learn it theoretically, but you have to do a bit of an apprentice model to actually really get good with people that are excellent, right?
Yeah.
So.
Do you think that is a problem now in current tech companies? Is that there's you know, very heavy tech focus and not so much liberal arts? Or?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's the tech companies. I think it's probably the educational system.
Okay.
The kids are coming out of an educational system where, you know, I feel pretty confident on this indictment on the educational system, where they're just not trained how to think. They're almost like trained how to not think, to be scared to express a different point of view. But it's a different point of view that is the one that is most valuable, right? So it's like there's an old movie called 12 Angry Men, and but it's also kind of a classic play or something. I don't know what the hell it is. But basically, it's about how this one juror just refused to go along with the other 11. But turns out he ends up persuading all of them to his side. But why is that important? We need that one person. You know what I mean? You got one in the back and one over here. But Salem Center's like that. It's like the one at the university that is that person that disagrees and has the. Now, even if that person's off and they're wrong, the value of allowing the disagreement is key, because otherwise you don't hear that other perspective. Because we can all get caught up in our own echo chamber and we're off, right? But we've got to hear, we've got to let other people, like people criticize me and make fun of me, different stuff, right? I almost think, man, that's great, keep it coming. Because I want to understand what are the areas I can improve. Now, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff, but I want to hear it and listen to it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I think that's key for figuring out the truth. Yeah. So and that would be a problem I have with the university system. Some of that can happen in high school too, but we're having a similar issue in high school where people are trained to be almost worried about social fallouts, like popularity or something, if they just speak a different point of view. I mean, that's a dangerous position to be in, right? Yeah. So what if you were in Germany and you said, I love Jews, they're great people? That's not going to be acceptable. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You're getting in a position where they're going to start picking their little enemies, and then you can't have a different point of view. I think everybody knows what happened with that in Germany. So we don't want to have a position where people can't speak their views. Mm-hmm. So
given this issue, what would you recommend students like ourselves to do right now so we thrive in this industry and possibly find a job?
Yeah, and I do want to encourage you guys. I mean, that's partly why I'm here. I'm, pretty shameless about my motives usually. Partly here to recruit you guys, obviously, but I also, more importantly than that, I want you to go and have an impact with your life, even if it's not with Rex, which means you're foolish and you went somewhere else, but it's fine. But I sincerely do want you guys to have an impact wherever you end up going, right? So I want you to get involved in entrepreneurship. And the reason why is because you can be an entrepreneurial person by getting in a startup and doing these other things. While you're young, you get in there and you push in. Because I know what's going on in Salem Center or someone, and I also know the people that are leading here. And we need people like that going in, because otherwise, if you leave it to everyone else, it's going to be a bad situation. You have the current tech industry has become very intolerant towards others, right? That's not good. It doesn't need to be like that, right? It wasn't like that under Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and these guys. It was never like that. That's why they gained so much trust with other people. So, anyways, what was your question though? I think I'm going way off.
What things can we do as students to make some practical training?
So I think it's smart that you're here. We have internships at our company, so I don't know if you guys have applied before, but even if I was talking to some Catholic Student Center for UT the other day, and one of the kids came up to me after, he's like, hey man, I got rejected in the application, whatever. He gave me his resume, and I said, okay, you're in, dude, don't worry about it. I just told him this guy's in. Because if you got guts like that, you're already in, because that's half of it in business. You got to have some guts, you got persistence, right? But I think getting in with companies that are just, they're just the leadership's gonna push it and not stop. That would be smart. Even if you wanted to go solo on your own, it's probably smart to get paid to learn for a little bit, right? So, and not everybody's meant to go solo anyways. You got to know yourself where you create the most value, because you could go solo and go under and just waste your time. You don't learn much, right? You could join a company and end up with, a ton of experience, ton of great impact, and a lot of money. So it's like I think you got to pick a horse there and figure out what you want to do there. But one thing you've already done that's very smart is you're here you're with like a Salem Center type thing, and that's already going to give you different perspectives, right? Because here I think, it seems to be that you could say anything you want, and there's no thought police. And that's key. When you're younger, when you're in college, you want to just debate everything. Everything. Because you don't, it's your time to do that, to figure out stuff. There should be just carte blanche. Say whatever you want. Don't worry about offending people. Later on, you can start worrying about that. Right now, you should figure out what is truth. Like, what is the truth?
As you scale, how do you kind of plan on maintaining that company culture?
No, I mean, this is a huge problem, right? So trying to figure out how to do that. You've got to institute certain principles over time. I think what we'll end up doing is having something like a constitution. The Constitution of the United States helped the United States a lot to keep some, help to course correct back to the original ideas. So, but the Constitution, you have some parts that you can change over time, right? So we need to have something like that. Something like a constitution, I think, is what we're going to have. It's also about who you let in now. It has an outsized impact on 10 to 20 years from now, right? The people that come in now, they help to infuse into that culture. And eventually the company will get really big, and just be realistic, right? In 30 years or whatever, I mean, it'd be massive. And, I don't know. It could be like I'm saying to you guys, like maybe it's not a company you want to go to at that point. But maybe, but there's always for somebody else at that point. I'll probably be like, don't go to these startups, I'll be like dying in my, like in a wheelchair. I'd be like, don't go to these startups. They're all going to go under. No, but I think it's still the right move. But I think what we'd probably do is, I observed Amazon when I was in Seattle, and I think they did a very good job with this of incubating. They call it single-threaded, but basically it's separated off, containerized, separate unit that is focused on a certain initiative, like Alexa, for example, and they were successful. Now you have groups like Google that have not been successful like that generally. They have had a tough time monetizing anything besides search. I don't think they've been able to monetize anything so far besides search, but from what I'm aware of. But now that's not to say that their stuff doesn't make sense. It does. I mean, they get out there. Everything's about search essentially. So they're, your phones, a lot of the stuff helps them to get platformization to monetize search. But Amazon fires on multiple threads. I mean, AWS, which is also separately incubated, is probably $1 trillion company on its own. So I mean, that was an insane thing they came up with there. But it took them 10 years to actually produce that. And it was unclear it was going to succeed even in like year 6 or 7, if what I understand. I mean, but anyways, I think their retail thing has obviously been successful. That's the first thing they did. And then they did a marketplace thing, which was also very successful. But they figured out a way to separately do these. So you'd have to create like a startup within the company, but it needs to be done. There's a book called Innovator's Dilemma that is a great book on business that I think has good insights on anything to do with entrepreneurship. But it talks about how startups don't succeed and why they don't succeed and why companies fail long term. There's another book called Innovator's Solution, a follow-up by a guy, Clayton Christensen, which is a very good book, and it explains how to get around that. Now, I think you can get around it, but I think in the end of the day, things start to fail in business, right? Eventually, Amazon will get old and crusty and start to plateau for a while, and then kind of like Sears or something, go its own way and become like IBM. It's a good tech company, but not cutting edge, right? Or it does some cutting edge stuff, but it's not, I don't know. So there might be people going to IBM. And IBM's fine, but you know what I'm saying? They were in their heyday in like the 60s or something. And Microsoft started kicking their butt in the 80s. Yeah. So, but then, bottom line is, I think eventually businesses don't last forever. People do. That's more theology.
My favorite thing that you talked about is the OwnProp. I think that's probably the coolest thing I've ever heard. So when is it going to happen? Like, when can I invest in real estate?
Well, we're not going to let you invest, actually, but other people can. Yeah, the rest of the class can, just not you. So, no. So that's happening already right now. We've already bought the hotel. They're working out some different forks that they want to figure out, whether it's tokenizing the LLC or Anyways, I don't got to get into it. But I would say they're weeks away rather than months of getting that done. Now, when can a non-accredited investor invest? I don't know if you're already rich, maybe, who knows? But maybe you can invest right away. I would assume your probably income's not as high yet. But but non-accredited, I think we had to clear the SEC. We'll have to clear the SEC on that. But accredited investors, which is this definition by the SEC, can invest fairly quickly in weeks. Months though for non-accrediteds. But we're putting the application in and working through that hoops and stuff. So
how do you keep the balance between retaining what has worked, but also encouraging new ideas?
I think when things are already working, I'm not as personally involved. I'm a very disruptive person. I'm a disruptive force. I always want to be around stuff that's not quite there yet. So when things are working, I tend to want to distance myself a bit from it once we get it down and actually almost just not show up to that section of the business because it's on its way. And we have good leadership there and they'll figure things out as they're running. But there's always a trade-off, right? There are things that are being done well that don't need to be changed, that are good technologies, they're useful, stuff like that. And then there are things that do need to be changed. I drive a Land Cruiser, which is like an indestructible car, thanks to a recommendation from a friend of mine. That's from here. But actually, I didn't even pick it. He just told my assistant what to get, and I showed up, and it was a Land Cruiser. But anyways, but the car is really well made, right? It's perfectly made as a car would go. And when you look at the design of it, I'm just giving this as an example. They still have certain things there's the old school where you can pull the emergency brake. And it actually is a superior way to do it than the new way that they have it. And they have a few other things like that. And these types of cars tend to be the ones used in other countries that are almost off the grid, right? If you're in Africa, that's they'll use something like that because it could just, it's a car that could just keep going, go for millions of miles, right? So, but anyway, so there's some technologies that are certain ways of doing things that are good and they'll be sticky and they'll continue to be used. Kind of almost like email, I think might stay sticky. I still use email. I prefer it to even Slack. I don't like Slack, probably because I'm too ADD, man. I just be freaking have to go check it all the damn time. I'm damn, I get off this thing. So anyways, but Slack is good though for fast collaboration, especially around engineering and stuff. It's very helpful, you know. So, but anyways, I think some things stay and you keep them because it's consistent, it's persistent, you know. And what things will stay durable, right? So when you think about it's also an interesting question when you think in entrepreneurship, is when things are, like some things are durable and most people think always about the change part, but it's something that's smart to actually think about in the reverse, and I do both, is what things will stay the same. And that's helpful because you can figure out what do you need to build technology, what can you safely start building technology around because that will still be there. Well, one thing is maintenance, right? Maintenance will always be there because as they keep building stuff, it needs to get maintained eventually, it gets older, right? And grass needs to be cut, all this stuff, right? So that will still be here. And there's a lot of things that won't be here, but that will be here. Housing will be here. People need a place to live. And there's a lot of other things I can get into. And the technologies we're building are building around things I have thought about that will be durable over the next 30 to 60 years. They're not going to go away. The form in which you deal with them will change, though. Like how you own properties will change due to OwnProp. You'll be able to own pieces of property that you don't necessarily live in, and that living in and using could just separate itself out as two separate things. Right now they're together. A lot of people have their net worth tied into their home, but I think that could be separated out. So, and I think it might be better, a lot of people get pissed about this for whatever reason, but I think it'd be better if it does. I just don't think they've thought it through all the way to the end. I think it'd be better if you just separate it out. But maybe that's just personally, like I hate owning my own house, and I gotta fix it all, you know? I'd rather just like rent it and be like, just fix this, please.
How do you think the shift from people working in offices to living like working from home?
Yeah.
How do you think has that affected the commercial real estate environment, and would that help or would that hurt your company?
So it's affected the office a lot. It's actually caused more pressure on the residential side because naturally there's what do you call it? There's, what's the thing that you study? Interference or whatever?
Yeah, interference, yeah.
Yeah, it's not controlled fully. There's a network connection because the people that use offices live at home. So when they're not at an office, they're working from home, so they use more space. Yeah. There's, you know, so I think people tend to see the fallout on the office side because there's a huge amount of vacancy. But on the residential side, there's more usage happening. There's more pressure on that side. And people naturally will want more space. So I think that has played to the advantage of the residential side. It's hurt a lot on the commercial side. By hurting the commercial side, it also hurts retail side of people selling things locally in downtowns because those office people aren't there. But it benefits technology-driven things like DoorDash, these other ones, because people are ordering to their home. So there's like, you know, it's just displacement. Now, do I think that continues long term? I think some of it does. I would say half and half. Like half will just return back to office. We're mandatory in office because we're creating stuff. When you're creating stuff, you want to be together. It's way faster, for sure. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't know, we don't understand how we communicate fully yet. We can't, I mean, there's a lot of things we don't understand about human beings. We can't even cure cancer, right? So but we communicate in weird ways. We understand people. It's not just visual, it's other stuff. I've heard there's even electrical stuff that come out of people that you can almost feel or sense. There's definitely chemical stuff you can breathe in, almost like animals breathe, or you run into a girl you kind of fall for her, you can sort of just not even think anymore clearly, which is probably what happened to my wife when she agreed to marry me. So anyways, but there's these chemical things, right? So, but I think also that this happens in the workplace. You can almost like pick up on things from people. You vibe off of them. And then ideas overflow and spill over serendipitously in ways that you wouldn't be able to predict. So you might be like just grabbing a coffee with somebody and this person's like working on this thing and they mention something random to you and you're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I haven't thought about that. And then you could go apply that to your side of the business or a different business altogether. That's part of the idea of the 10 as well. There's overflows and spillages of ideas of where they can just, you know, take this and apply it over there. So I think people will learn that the hard way and they'll come back. I had remote a lot. I used to have San Francisco office, Seattle, Dallas, you know, different stuff, right? And it worked for like 18 months and then we started seeing it having problems. So about 36 months in, I was like, the hell with this. And that was right around COVID when it hit. So I'd already learned that the hard way. You know, when you learn to the tune of millions of dollars of pain, you remember, especially when it's your own money. So, but yeah, I learned that the hard way. The creativity just, you start having mission misalignment or strategic product misalignment happening in small ways, but they compound on themselves. So that slow burn happens down the road. Then you have relational issues that start to break down a bit, where people start to distrust each other, or they'll distrust me. They're like, oh, what is Pete doing? Or whatever it would be. Then you'll have trust happen locally is what happens. So people will go, even if they don't work with each other, they'll be like, they don't even work on the same, like one guy's an engineer and the other guy's doing something different, biz dev, but they live in the San Francisco office. Well, they'll go to each other's weddings, baptisms, whatever it might be, and they'll become friends, right? They won't become as tight with their own cohort that they're working with. It could be in Seattle office, Dallas, whatever it is. So I saw that happening also. And relationship is really a bedrock for innovation, because you need to have that relationship with people as when you're creating on a team, because then you can very quickly understand each other and play off each other's own rhythms, because everyone's got their own way of doing things. Everyone's so different, you know? Yeah, I don't, and then I think the other half will be hybrid. Now they'll either straight remote, or they'll come in. So I think office will never return to what it was as a percentage of the population, but it will definitely revert heavily more than people think it will. But I'm not that long office. I bought like one office thing, and it's really well located. So, I mean, we've had tons of people that want to lease it out already. So it's not even, I'm not worried about it. I'm in the core. But anyways, I'm cautious with the office side. We thought about buying a couple buildings recently, and the only reason why I held back was not quite sure where office is going. So, but homes will stay the same. People will keep living in a home. Homes, by the way, is interesting. I've been to, when you see in like ancient Greece and these other areas, you'll find like ruins. I forget where it was, but you see like ruins from like 10,000 years ago, and the homes they had sewage, they had a lot of the same stuff. I mean, they're effectively the same. So I think the way people live in a home, we'll see adaptations with IoT being applied, but probably stays somewhat very similar, actually. So, but I'm, the other thing, I just riffing on different things on technology. Some of these things I'm not actively doing yet, but I'm bullish on, and maybe down the road. But I'm very bullish on some of the tunneling stuff. I'm not bullish on air taxis and crap like that, like going, driving around the air. I think it's just pollution and stuff is not going to be good. And then I also think it's just no one wants to see cars riding around in the air, and they'll hit birds and cause problems. So I'm not bullish on the air taxi thing. And also gravity is going to cause so much energy consumption. So, because you have to stay up above the gravity. But tunneling, I think that's great. I mean, if we could figure that out, I mean, we basically already have it. I mean, we know what to do. But you have to do it, because then you could go and cause transportation to happen very fast. And you could get out far and allow people that drops cost of land like crazy. And then you could turn highways into parks or other residential areas that are nice, which then turns the houses that you're next to them into prime locations. So, and then people, if you could drop down land costs, and you could drop down housing costs, pretty much keep dropping it, because producing materials always gets, the production and the cost of materials when measured by inflation, generally if you don't account for regulation and stuff like that, will go down because of technology. We drive down the cost of production, right? Like your computer is, very cheap compared to, well, they never had something that's powerful even 40 years ago or 50 years ago probably, but whatever, even 10 years ago it's dropped down. Costs have continued to drop. So. Yeah, and there's other things around that I'm 3D printing and applying that to figuring out how to create custom homes, so people can customly pick their own home using, essentially, you can almost like have virtual reality and walk through it, see exactly how they want, and then 3D print it out, I like that. So not doing that right now, but the thing is I can't get to every idea I like, but I still want other people to go do them, because it makes the world better, right? So
as more companies start coming from the West Coast states to Texas, do you think they're eventually gonna come to their senses, or do you think we're gonna keep separating, or not separating, but do you think policies are gonna become better in those states, or they're gonna become more like Texas, or is Texas gonna shift back more like them?
I think they're gonna become more like Texas, and the reason why is because, I mean, you can just see how much people don't like it. Nobody moves easily. I know this personally because I run a company where I've moved people many times. You'd be surprised, even if you know someone really well. I mean, I've had people very close to me where I offered a lot of cash and they just will not move. People do not move easily. When you uproot, it's extremely painful. And you go move to a different place. That just is the biggest tell. It's the biggest revealing of how dissatisfied people are with the way the regulations are going, the way the governments are. So I think they will change. I think we will see a pendulum come back because they will suffer as a result. I think they're already starting to, I mean, there's so many people that can't move that are just, you know, really not liking it. Ultimately, the American ideals are, I mean, by the way, none of this is deterministic, so I don't know. I mean, it could also get worse, right? People probably thought Cuba was going to come back, right? I mean, how could it get any worse than Fidel? But hey, I'm staying with Fidel for like 60 years. You go to Cuba now, it's like 1960s and everything's old. I've been there. I've been in Havana and all around Cuba. But I don't even know if you can go there actually right now. I went through like a window where it was allowed. But anyways, I came in and I had, it's like Cuba, for example, right? I show up in Cuba. People had warned me, you go to Cuba, roll with cash because you can't use anything. Nothing works. And I was like, whatever, man. I didn't even pay attention. I got there without any cash, and I was like completely stuck. I had to negotiate, just hustle everybody. I was like, hey, man, I got you, man. I would just get in the car, go to where I'm going, and then when I got there, but then I was like, I'll haggle. I was like, hey, you know, I can speak Spanish. Like, hey, I ain't got no money, man. Like, we're going to make an IOU. And then I'm saying, I get the hotel to like get everything lined up for me. Then it turns out like I don't have any money, and I'm like, oh, this okay? I ended up having to hustle my way. I got a hotel. I got everything I wanted. I got tickets to like what the hell they call it? Something like the Copacabana or whatever. I forget. I got tickets to that without money, but I had to just like hustle it, you know, like old school. And I owed everybody money, which I got them all back money. I had to arrange for some cash to get some cash, but I even got a haircut without cash. It was pretty funny. So, but nothing works. You know what I'm saying? It's like backwards, and I'm sure they thought in the '60s it can't get any worse. Well, it got worse. So things could still go bad. It could get, and it's not that bad in Cali. When you compare California and these other places to some other governments, I mean, they're still better, right? So, but it's trending in the wrong direction. There are people that are really feel despair, like what's going on? The American ideals, I didn't move my family here for this, from this other, what, like say they came from former Soviet bloc countries. They're like, oh, we've heard from a lot of these folks actually have hit us up, figuring out, try to ways to help us or work with us because they came to this country and they brought their families here and they don't want to go in that way. So I think, you know, you guys are the ones who can make sure it doesn't happen, right? And it only takes a few people to take a stand. Really only takes one, theoretically, can actually really move the needle. You look at Joan of Arc in the history, right, of France. She was literally one person that stood against Britain, which was basically had taken over everything. England had taken over everything in France, and she just stood against as a one person, and eventually rallied the whole country, and England was completely kicked out and routed. So one person can really make a very big difference. And even the American Revolution, right, when we had our Revolution in America back in the day, similar, it wasn't a lot of people. It was a very small minority. And George Washington, I mean, stood alone on so many things, right? 9 years he was, basically, guerrilla warfare almost with his army, trying to fight with the British Empire, which is the most powerful, with an army that it couldn't get shoes for the people. But eventually, with the grit and determination, he had what he calls heaven on his side. What he remind his troops, like, we have heaven on our side too. So when you got that, you can stand with that type of grit and determination.
Well, with the whole talk of like the metaverse and all that, first I'm curious to know, like, what do you think about it, and if you've like thought about implementing some kind of like that technology to your products and business and all that.
Big picture, I think we need to get back together, in person. This is more important than going meta. That being said, though, I do see the advantages of certain things, digitalizing things and being able to interact there. Even with my own kids, right? I was telling these guys earlier that before we came here is that my kids are being tutored, homeschooled, whatever you want to call it, 90% of normal school. That tells you how much I'm bullish on school. But the system is like so antiquated, like it's an industrial process system, right? So you can't quite like tailor it to the kids as easy. Now it's difficult to school your own kids, but I'm gonna, use things like, virtual reality where the kids can experience almost like walking around in Egypt, right? Say, for example, or wherever. Because then the kids can then like really concretely feel that experience. But in other words, it's an additional thing, and it can help actually as like a thing you can use as a tool. So I am bullish on it, but I just say like right now I do think most people probably need to get back together with other people. You look at the level of suicide rates and depression and people on medications and stuff. I mean, we feed off each other. Our immune systems are much stronger. We're together. We're happier. We get things done. You know what I'm saying? We breed and stuff, but that's for later for you guys. So don't worry about that.
All right, guys. Well, let's thank Peter, and
Thank you, guys.
You can
Appreciate
chat
it.
with him after if you want.